Okay, so welcome back, and in the previous video we just scraped the hide, and like I said there, if you're just ready to go when the hide is still wet, just go for it, and gonna proceed to the braining part, which we're going to do now. But what I like to do, like I said, is that I just scrape my hides in the fall, and then I just let them age dry over the winter, and then I just brain and soften my hides in the summertime when it's hot, which is the best time really to soften hides. And so this is a hide that I let dry over the winter time, and if you can, it's great to be able to fold the hide. You know, to brain the hide, we're gonna put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and so if you have a large hide like this, you know, which I just simply put over something to dry, and I didn't get a chance to fold it. You know, once it's in that state, there's a little flexibility in the sides of it, but on the main hide it's pretty tough, and so I'm not going to want to fold that to force it into a 5-gallon bucket. If you force something that's dry like this, it's going to tear. You know, of course you don't want that. And so, you know, if you get the chance, before your hide gets completely dry, you know, not when it's wet, because then the hide may rot, but when it's almost dry, you can fold it in such a way that you could fold in a 5-gallon bucket easily, you know, which makes the next step a little quicker and easier to deal with. If I have a big hide like this that I didn't get a chance to fold, in general I just put it in a big trash can, a big volume of water or a tub of water, until it gets supple enough that I can put it in a 5-gallon bucket. I don't want the hide to be completely wet, because then that's going to prevent the oils to penetrate into the hide very well. And so, you know, not get it wet, but just put it in water until it's just flexible enough that I can put it in a 5-gallon bucket. And so, you know, that's where we are now. Pretty much we have our dry hide and we want to brain it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the braining process. I say braining because that's what I use traditionally. You know, brains were used to tan hides, among other things. And if you do your own hunting, you may have the brains of the animal available to you to tan your hides. If you don't, then you can order some brains through your butcher, the odds are. So I get, you know, a 30-pound case of brains from the butcher once a year or so, and I can my brains like that, and I have an article about that on my blog, you know, which is a great way to just preserve brains to deal with later. And what the brains do, or any kind of oil that can emulsify with water, which means that the fats and the water has to mix together very well. And so what those oily substances do is that right now, you know, the fibers of the hide are really intricately woven together, and they're glued together, pretty much literally. And so that's why the hide is really hard right now. And so when we put it in water, the fibers of the hide are going to relax, and with the oily substance, with the brains, that's going to lubricate the fibers so that it can slide on top of each other really easily. And during the softening process, that's what we want, for the fibers to slide off each other, so we can stretch them really well, and then they dry soft instead of drying hard. So let's see. And so I think that's about it. I'm gonna switch the camera here so we can show you how to deal with the brains, and then we'll get the hide going. Okay, so at the bottom of this bucket, this 5-gallon bucket that I'm gonna use, I put a little bit of hot water in there, and you want your brain solution to be fairly smooth. And it's one thing with brains is that even if you get food grade brains from a butcher, there's always some little bone fragments in there. And as you'll see later on, we're going to put quite a bit of tension onto the hide when we wring it out. And so you don't want anything that's pokey in there or sharp, like bone shards. And so we're going to have to go through the brains to make sure to remove all the bone shards. And also we want our brain mixture to be fairly creamy. We don't want any big chunks of solid brains in there. And so we really want to mix the fatty substance in the brains into the water very well. And so, you know, I just pulled out some brains from my canned brains. And I'm pretty much just gonna, that's what I didn't talk about is how much brains. So you want anywhere between a half pound to a full pound of brains per hide that you're doing. And when you get started, I recommend that you just start with one hide at a time. You know, when you get more experience, you can do 2 or 3 hides at a time. But start with one hide for sure, just to get a feel for it. And so if your hide is, you know, of a medium size, kind of on the small size and fairly light, then a half pound of brain is fine. If you're dealing with a large hide that's really thick, then the more like a pound of brains would work out. And so when you get in your brains, you know, you can just smush them between your fingers. Make sure there's no bone shards. And kind of mix them with water. And it's actually fairly easy to miss the bone shards, so you don't want to go too fast. And you know, when they're in the water, you can smash them even more in the water, and they will just dissolve a little more. You really want to dissolve as much of the chunks as possible. And so, you know, it takes a little time, but it's definitely worth it not to have bone shards and to have a good brain solution. So I'm going to keep on doing that until I get my, you know, probably 3/4 pounds of brains in there for the hide that I have. And then I'll just show you when I put the hide in there. Okay, so I pretty much just crushed all the brains in the little bit of water that I had. Don't start with a lot of water, because otherwise the brain's gonna get lost in there and it's a lot harder to just push down. But now you're gonna wanna dunk your dry hide in the solution. And of course you need a little more water than this. And the temperature of the water matters quite a bit. Cold water works, but it takes longer to get all the fibers to get stretched out. Hot water works really well, so well that your hide can actually dissolve in it, which is clearly not what you want. And so you want the perfect temperature. And as a rule of thumb, whatever is good for your own skin is good for the deer hide as well. And so, you know, bath temperature water, which is really hot, but not so hot that you couldn't leave your hand in it, is perfect. And we're going to start with a couple of gallons of water, because the hide will absorb quite a bit of it. But you don't want so much water, you know, that you have an excess of it. So you'll, in the end, you'll only have enough water to cover the limp hide at the bottom of the bucket. So I'll just pour a little hot water for now, and then I'll add a little cold water as well. Okay, so that's about right. You know, I can leave my hand in there, but it's definitely pretty warm. Actually, I'll do a little more hot water, but not much. You definitely don't want to play Russian roulette with this one. You know, if it's too hot for your hand, don't put your hide in there. Okay, so that's good. And so right now, just simply put my dry hide, put it in there, and I can rub the sides. It's going to take a little bit for the hide to absorb all the water, which is why that the warmer water will be helpful. And the edges will soak up the water quite evenly. Where it's folded like this, it can be helpful to just put a little water on there already, just so that it doesn't crack. And you can just flip your hide around too to expose more of it to the water. Okay, and you can see, you know, this part is already starting to absorb quite a bit of the moisture. And so like I said, you know, depending on the amount of time that you have, you can just play with it quite a bit and rub it and stretch it as it becomes more flexible. Or if you don't have the time right now, you can just, you know, leave it for a few minutes and then come back and flip it around and expose another area of the hide to the warm water. And so, you know, I'm just gonna do that for now. You don't need to see all of this forever, but that's kind of the idea right now at this point, is that we want the whole hide to be this consistency. So, you know, this is dry and this is wet, and you're gonna want to stretch it as much as possible, including the edges, which are really dry right now, until your entire hide is flexible, right, like that. And so I'm gonna do that, and then I'll show you how to work it a little bit more actively for, you know, a more active braining part of it. Okay, so I've been working this hide, just opening it up. So all the parts that, you know, where this tawnish color needs to be turned white, and you can just use your fingernails to open it up. And you definitely don't want to neglect your edges, because those can have a tendency not to be brained as well and worked as well. But really you want to have your whole hide like this. So, you know, everything was hard and tawnish, and now everything is supple and white, which is what you want. And it's slippery from the brains, kind of slips between your fingers. And so you definitely want to get your hide to this state. Opening your edges, opening the edges of your holes too, if you have holes, that's very important. And then the braining process, so of course, you know, while you're doing this, the brains are definitely soaking in, that's why the hide is supple. But the braining process is an active process. Actually, there's an inverse relationship between the amount of time that you work on it and how long it's going to take. So the more active you are working the brains inside, the shorter amount of time it's going to take. And what I like to do is kind of washing machine action, where you just kind of grab, squeeze, and twist, and that just kind of helps kind of twist the hide in different ways and get the brains inside. You can change the position of the hide a little bit and start again. And then you can pull it out and, you know, stretch it, make sure that all the spots are open, etc., etc. And so I like to do that, you know, this active kind of washing machine action for about 15 minutes. And then, you know, you can take a little break before the next section for another 15 minutes maybe. So, you know, it's like 15 minutes of active work, and then another 15 minutes of the hide just resting and soaking in the brains. And so I'm going to keep on working it a little bit like this, and then we'll move to the next part.